we're going to go ahead and start right up. Thank you so much for coming. My name is David Iglesias, and I run Wheaton Center for Faith, Politics, and Economics. I've been here 10 years, and we've never done a public event on money. So fast forward about 9.5 years, I'm reading this article about this rogue UVA professor named, I thought his name was Robert Parham, but it's actually Robert Parham. Parham. Okay. So please don't call him Parham, okay? He teaches and researches finance at the University of Virginia. His path there was colorful, including escaping Iran as a 10-month-old refugee following the Islamic Revolution there, studying computer science at the Israeli Institute of Technology, serving as a captain at the IDF, and heading a cybersecurity academy at Israeli intelligence for 2 years. And then he hitchhiked from Alaska to San Diego, which is epic.
It was.
So that's the hardest thing for me to actually believe, but knowing you a little bit, I completely believe it. He backpacked South America for a year, coming to the U.S. to complete his PhD in financial economics and teaching and researching ever since. Please give a warm Wheaton welcome to Dr. Robert Parham.
Okay, this might be different from what you expect, or if you don't expect anything, then that's better. The secret to happiness is low expectations. Take that from me. I want to talk to you about money. More precisely, I want to provide a service to you. And that service will be explaining to you about money. And the reason I put it in these terms will hopefully become very clear. Now, this question, what is money? It sounds stupid, right? Like, everyone knows what money is. I mean, what's with this stupid question? And whenever you encounter stupid questions, the question is, are they stupid or deep? Okay, so the first question about the question is it a trivial question, right? So you can get confused. And I was confused for many years. This is how I ended up studying the finance PhD, because I was super confused, and then I took one class about finance, and it just organized everything in my head, and I was like, this is like magic. So I wanted more of that. So don't get confused by that. Just don't. It's just paper, and we'll understand why it's just paper and what this paper measures. Okay? Now, sort of, you all know how to use money, right? But you also all know how to use a web browser. You all browse the internet. Does that mean you understand the underlying technology? Do you understand how TCP/IP packets are being routed between routers? No. The fact that you know how to use a credit card doesn't mean you understand money. This is what I'm going to try and convince you. That money is a technology, a stable technology for thousands of years. Okay? And that you can understand it. I used to be a hacker, and that's what hackers do. They understand technologies, right? That's the technology I wanted to hack. So let's begin with that. What is that thing and why is it here? Raise your hands or just shout or whatever. I don't much care. Who knows what that is? There are all sorts of hints down here, so you can also cheat and look at the small writings. What is that thing? Yes?
Is it an account?
We're getting close, right? First of all, clearly some clay tablet, right? That's what we call these things. It's a clay tablet, and it's got some writing in obviously some weird historic language, right? This is the beginning of history. This is the first known writing, and historians, they separate history and prehistory based on when we started writing stuff. So this is the beginning of history. This is one of the first written documents ever found. And once we figured out what's going on with that document, it became clear that this document is really important. This document comes from the Great Sumerian Empire, the city of Uruk. Now I've got a weird question. Who here ever heard or encountered the name Gilgamesh? Anyone? Raise your hands if you heard the name Gilgamesh before. That's like about half the crowd. Now, if you think Taylor Swift is famous, right? When half of a random crowd in a land far, far away knows your name 6,000 years after you died, this is fame. So let's talk about King Gilgamesh and what King Gilgamesh did. To understand that, we need to get into the head of the Sumerian farmer. If you're a Sumerian farmer living in the Great Sumerian Empire, how does your life look like? Well, first thing we know about you is that you grow a lot of barley. Barley is the cash crop of the Sumerian Empire. It's in modern-day Iraq, the city of Uruk, right in the meeting of the Euphrates and the other one. Forgot his name. Thank you. And you grow barley, but there's a problem with barley. Barley, you plow the land and you plant the barley, and etc. And then you harvest it, and suddenly you got a lot of barley. And then the barbarians come from the mountains, and they kill you, and they do bad things to the rest of your family, and they take your kids as slaves, and they take all your barley, and they return to the mountains. And that is not fun, I assume you would agree. King Gilgamesh, in his great wisdom, built the city of Uruk and surrounded it with a very strong wall. So the barbarians can't get to the city, so what do you do? Well, you harvest your barley, and you take all that barley, and you go to the city of Uruk, and you go to the temple in the middle of the city, temple, granary. And you give the priests all your barley, priests, accountants. Okay? You give the priests all your barley, and what they give you is one of those. Right? And what this thing says is, on date this and that came and deposited this and that much barley. But there is a thing, there is a twist. It doesn't say when this and that comes back, he can get the barley. Anyone who comes back with this thing can get the barley. Anyone. So it's what we call a bearer's note. Anyone who bears the note can get the barley. Okay? So this is the first bearer's note. Now, if I'm a Sumerian farmer and I grew all the barley and I went and deposited that and etc., now I have a few options of what I do with that. One thing I can do is go and, withdraw barley from the bank of barley, the temple. Another thing I can do is I can go to, say, the dude that raises the cows. And I'm like, hey, nice cow, how about you give it to me? It's like, what do you mean give? I rose that. I took care of this cow. Well, since it was a baby. What do you mean give? No, you don't understand. I will give you this thing, and then you can go to the temple of Uruk, and you can get barley from the temple of Uruk. So it's like me giving you barley, it's the same thing. Right? And you'll give me the cow, and I'll give you this thing. And I'm sure in the beginning it was a bit confusing for people. But pretty quickly, the Great Sumerian Empire got used to the idea that these things have value. Right? So the farmers would invest the labor of harvesting, of growing and harvesting the barley, and then they'll take it to town, deposit it in the temple, and then they would start exchanging these pieces between them. Right? So I give it to the person with the cows, and the person with the cows, some of these people will go to the temple and get barley. Some of these people will buy other stuff with it, right? I don't have to exchange it for barley. I can go to the person making the swords, the blacksmith, and tell him, hey, how about you give me a sword in exchange for one of those? Does that make sense? Right? This is the first money, because that's what money is, right? It's just like a proof that at some point in the past, someone deposited some barley. Right? Now, something weird happened. And that weird thing that happened is that people would come to the temple of Uruk and deposit the barley and take these, and then they'll go and exchange them between them, and barley will just accumulate in the temple. Right? Nobody's coming for the barley. People find these so useful that they want this, they don't want barley. So sometimes people will come and collect some barley, but most of the time the barley will just sit there. So the Great Sumerian Empire, besides inventing writing and money and empire, they've also invented beer. What they did with all the barley is made beer for the priests. Right? That's what you do with barley. So that's what was going on. Now, if that sounds like an elite group of tech hackers printing proof of work certificates, and if that sounds like those of you who learned about crypto assets, if that sounds anything like crypto assets, it's because it is. Okay? So that was the technology of money. Okay, I have a certificate, and if I go, I'll get that back, and etc. And that technology was a stable technology for 5,000 years. Right? Dollar bills in the US until 1971. You could go to a bank and withdraw gold. So yeah, we moved from the barley standard to the gold standard at some point along the way. But this is the same technology. Right? Now, some people ask me over dinner, there was a discussion about why gold. Anyone knows why gold? What's so special about gold? Yeah.
It's relatively scarce. It takes a lot of energy to get more of it.
So scarcity is a very important feature, one of two important features. The other one, very good about the scarcity. Scarcity, I'm not sure. Yeah?
It's a store of value.
It's a store of value because of these two features, and one of them is scarcity. The other one is durability. Let me tell you a story. Everyone that played with, D&Ds or knows their history know that there were 3 denominations of currency. There were copper coins, there were silver coins, and then there were gold coins, right? This was the order. And this is true for thousands of years, right? And then, 1850 or so, we discovered a periodic table of elements, and what do you know? Column 11 of the periodic table of elements, copper, silver, gold. Now, if that's not a weird coincidence, I don't know what is, right? Why column 11? Why did humanity, all of humanity, all across the world, somehow agree that column 11 of the periodic table of the elements is our store of value? Anyone? What's so special about column 11 of the periodic table of the elements? Atoms, and then the electrons in the outside of the shell, and blah, blah, blah. Bottom line, if your store of value was a liquid, and all of your life savings would pour out, that's not a good thing. If it was a gas, and it will all just like go up in smoke, that's also not a good thing. Even if it was a metal, and it just like rusted away, your life savings, that's not good. What you want from a store of value is for it to be scarce. And the scarcity degrees go, like the lower down the table of elements you go, the more scarce it is. And you want it to be durable. You don't want it to get, to rust away while you're saving for retirement. And that's why we all agree on the column 11, the noble metals that don't react with oxygen, the great oxidizer of our planet. Okay? So this is a stable technology. The idea that this bill represents your ability to go and withdraw something that someone put effort into mining or growing or whatever. This is what money is. Okay, let's continue because there is more to go. The title of this slide, Import equals Export, is one of the few what I think of as economic laws. This is a rule that must exist. The total value of the imports of the country must, when you put that aside, because again, let's not confuse ourselves, must equal the total value of all the stuff exported by this country. Why? Can someone tell me why? Anyone has a hypothesis? A guess. This is fancy for guess, right? Hypothesis is a fancy word for guess. Anyone has a hypothesis why the total value of imports must equal the total value of exports for a country? Someone. So it goes like that. When a country imports stuff, what does that mean? It means that some other country produced that thing and then gave it to us, right?
Why?
That's what import means. What is export? It means that we made something and gave it to another country. So far, so good.
Maybe.
Export is the way you pay for imports. Right? You get a bottle of wine from France because you gave them iPhones. And it must be that the total value of wines must equal the total value of iPhones because the iPhones are the payment for the wines. Does that make sense? We don't pay for things with money because really the French don't have much to do with pieces of paper. What they want is our stuff. iPhones in that example, or Teslas, or choose whatever. Right? So the total value of imports must equal the total value of exports at the country level. But then comes an interesting question. Is that only true at the country level? Can we apply that to different levels of aggregation? I like to talk with my students at UVA about the imports and exports of Charlottesville, Virginia. Small town, about the same size as Wheaton, slightly larger. What do we import from the rest of the world? What do you import from the rest of the world? Anyone? What do you import? Pretty much everything seems like a good answer, right? Like with the exception of, I don't know, whatever is produced in Wheaton, I have no idea what that might be. Right? You import everything. Why does the world give you stuff? What do you export? What are the main export industries in Wheaton? Yeah.
Price services.
Probably services. The reason I like to apply that to Charlottesville is because the main export of Charlottesville is trained labor. Right? We bring students in, there are raw material, and then we teach them for 4 years, and then we export them to the rest of the world, right? And most of the money that comes into Charlottesville from the outside world comes as tuitions. And then these tuitions are distributed between all of the professors and workers and etc. I get some of that tuition, right? And then I go to a restaurant and I give it to people that work there, and etc. And all the stuff that they get from the outside world, they get it in exchange for services they provided me, and I provided services to the students, and that was for tuition money. The main export of Charlottesville is trained labor or teaching services at UVA, right? And this is how we pay for everything we import from the rest of the world. And it must be that the total amount that comes into Charlottesville as tuition is equal to the total amount of stuff that we bring from the outside world. Cell phones and cars and whatever. Because import must equal export. Because export is how you pay for imports. Now, the cool thing is that it doesn't just apply at the county level, right? Because when you think about it very carefully, you realize that it applies at the individual level as well. Which brings us to this conclusion. I like to say that money is memory of past services rendered. What do I mean by that? I go to the butcher, and that's like a boutique butcher. He raises the cows and butchers them and everything. He does everything himself. Okay? I go to the butcher, and I'm like, hey, this is a really nice steak. How about you give me that steak? What is his answer? What do you mean give? I raised the cow, I butchered it, why would I give it to you? What is my answer? No, you don't understand. This morning, I was standing in class and I was providing services to my students. And in exchange, they gave me this $20 bill, let's say, or 50 or whatever. They gave me this to commemorate that event, to commemorate my services to them. And now you're going to service me. And I'm going to give you this to commemorate your services to me. And he's like, yeah, but what do I do with that? Like, it's just, no, you don't understand. You can take that now and go to someone else and get services from them. And you can give them that to commemorate their services to you. And the same $50 bill can commemorate so many services rendered between people. But in each one of those, I give it of my free will because I perceive that this is worth my hard-earned karma points, service money, dollars. Right? And what we get is a closure of service. When you ask someone for services, what they want is to see that you've served other people. Like, why would I service you? Are you a net brain or society, or do you provide services to other people? Did you accumulate enough karma points for this test? Does that make sense? It's weird, but it is what it is. And you can choose to not ask for services from other people. That is an option that is available to you. You can, live in your parents' basement and play PlayStation or whatever. Which, by the way, someone put a lot of work into building. So you are still relying on other people's services. But that is what money is. It's memory of past services rendered. And that's why I like saying that there are only two ways to make a lot of money. What are these two ways? Provide really, really valuable services to a few people. Doctors and lawyers usually do that. Or provide, okay services to a lot of people. Entrepreneurs who know how to scale do that. Right? But that's what companies do. They provide you with services. Here's an exercise. Look around you for a sec and point at something that wasn't made by a corporation. Yeah, usually naked humans is the thing that comes to mind. Right? Even the clothes and everything and shoes, another company made those. These things, the carpet, the table, everything, right? To a first approximation, corporations produce all the things, and humans consume all the things. And yet we are so, angry with them. It seems very ungrateful of us, I think. The way we treat corporations, I represent corporations in this floor, so in the name of corporations, we're offended, just so you know. Okay, this brings us to the idea of zero-sum versus positive sum. Many of you, because this is currently the culture, have been steeped in zero-sum thinking. Zero-sum thinking is the idea that one's win in someone else's loss, or the idea of oppressor-oppressed, or whatever you want to call it. Okay? But let's talk about this cup of coffee for a second. I wake up in the morning, I rush to class, I don't have time to make coffee at home, so I stop at Starbucks, I walk in with a $5 bill, and I walk out with a cup of coffee. What happened? I haven't drank the coffee. I just walked in with $5 and walked out with a cup of coffee. And I want to analyze this ridiculously simple act that many of you do every day. Very carefully. I'm going to claim, no, I'm not going to claim, I have a question here. I'm going to ask you, does buying this cup of coffee make me wealthier or poorer? I mean, clearly I have $5 less, right? So the trivial answer is that it made me poorer. Anyone would like to defend the wealthier claim? Yes?
Do you value the coffee more than $5?
Of course I do, otherwise why would I walk into the shop and give them $5? I mean, I know how much I value $5. I value them at exactly $5. Right? We agree on that.
No.
We also know that I walked into that coffee shop of my own free will and gave them this thing that I value for $5 in exchange for something else. It can only be, there's like just no other way. It can only be that I value this cup of coffee at more than $5. But not only that, there's another thing that must be true. Can you tell me what's the flip side? No? It's okay. Yes?
The person that took the $5 bills values your $5 bill more than his hot
The
liquid.
Starbucks values a $5 bill more than it values this cup of coffee. It must be. Right? Because they sold it to me of their own free will. So it must be that they value this cup at less than $5. Because otherwise, why would they exchange it for a $5 bill? Doesn't make sense. So now, there are two things that we agree on. Starbucks values this thing at less than $5, and I value this thing at more than $5. I don't know how much more. And it's also like not constant, right? Maybe today I'm woozy and there was a hard night last night and etc. and I value it at $20. I mean, if I walk into Starbucks and they want $25 for it, I won't buy it. But if craziness happens and they charge $15, I'll still take it. But some other time, no, it's just like, I just feel like a cup of coffee, but not $15. So I walk into Starbucks and they ask for $15, I'm like, no, thank you. I'm gonna walk out. So my valuation of this cup of coffee changes. Doesn't have to be fixed. But I know that it's higher than $5 every time I buy a cup of coffee. Now another thought exercise. How much do you value your internet connection? Let's say that tomorrow morning, no more internet for you. There is no open Wi-Fi connections, there is no internet at the university, nothing. You need to have a special internet account on your phone, and there is one monopolist that can charge you how much they want. How much do you pay for internet? How much is internet worth to you? I know that to me it's worth at least a few $1,000s per month. Because like without it, all of the people that I love are lost to me. My access to all of the world's information is lost to me. I can't do my job. I can't do anything. I'm like completely crippled. If suddenly this crazy monopolist internet thing came along, then yeah, I would pay them as much as they want. So my valuation of internet services is in the thousands of dollars. How much do I pay for internet? I don't know. I have no idea. $50. It's so low that I don't even know. So every month, Verizon Wireless makes me a few $1,000s wealthier. Because every month I walk in and get something that I value at thousands of dollars and give them $50. Does that make sense? It sounds weird, but this is why we are so wealthy, because everything is so damn cheap. You used to, like, I'm not talking about 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, you used to have a hot shower on your wedding day. I have hot showers every morning. I'm assuming that many of you share this luxury. Why is that? Because a hot shower is a few cents. because it's cheap rather than being a super expensive thing. And this is what markets do. They make us super wealthy. I claim that we live in the golden age of humanity and we're wealthier than like our ancestors could have imagined. And this is all because companies are giving us stuff that we value extremely highly for super cheap. I mean, I don't know, I'm like, every time I walk into the metal pipe, and then like 4 hours later, I'm in a different place on Earth, and it didn't involve 3 months and a caravan of camels, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing! Right? But this is not what you'll get from a zero-sum thinking. From a zero-sum thinking, what you'll get is the idea that if I have something, I must have taken it from someone else. Whereas in a positive-sum thinking, every transaction is a transaction in which everyone benefits. Every free transaction. If you force me into a transaction, then I feel all bets are off. I can't prove that I benefited. But if I chose to engage in a free transaction, clearly it made me better off. There's just no other way. Not just me and the other side of the transaction. Not only that, let's talk about this cup of coffee a bit more. What just happened? I got out of the Zoom full screen, just a sec. We're back? No, we're not back. Let's talk about this cup of coffee. How many people does it take to make this cup of coffee? Come on. Anyone? It's okay. Being wrong is a superpower. The path to being right goes through being wrong. It took me a long time during the PhD program to get that into my thick head, right? Stopping to be afraid from being wrong was like one of the major steps in becoming a PhD. Because that's what researchers do. They're wrong and they're wrong and they're wrong and they're wrong and they're wrong until they're once right. That's what you need. To be right once. Yes?
Guess it would depend on how far back in the chain you go.
What do you mean how far back in the chain? My chain. It's like a cup of coffee. There's a barista and that's it, no?
There's a cup and a
I mean, and clearly the barista salary is the only input into that production, right? What else is there? Please. Sorry, of course,
Yeah,
being
no, I get it.
tongue-in-cheeky.
Right. You have coffee beans, you have all of the, the cup that it goes into and it lives.
So how many people does it take to make a cup of coffee?
You get to thousands and thousands.
What? I claim that you get in the billions. What are you talking about? What thousands? Give me 1,000 people and I will not be able to make a cup of coffee. As soon as you need maritime transportation for anything, you're at the billions. Anything that goes on a ship required billions of people to get to. Because shipping is like at the pinnacles of our industrial world. Alright? What does it take to make this cup of coffee? It's an easier thought pattern to realize that is the question, what happens with the $5 that I pay for the cup? Right? Let's start looking at these $5. Let's color them sort of in a radioactive color and see how they propagate through the economy. Right? So when I give $5 to Starbucks for this cup of coffee, what happens? First of all, I can tell you that about 5 to 10 cents of that becomes profit to Starbucks shareholders, etc. Like really tiny amounts. The average in the US is about 3.4% of the sale price becoming profit. Okay, 96.6% of the money you give a company goes out as expenses. Payments to labor, payments to goods providers, to raw materials, etc. And when you buy something from another company, well, again, payments to their laborers and their raw materials But if you start thinking about the family tree of this one cup of coffee, right? To make this cup of coffee, you need to drill for oil. So you need oil drills, right? Because like there's some plastic over there at the top. You need to build an entire forestry industry, and you need to build things that can cut down trees because there's some tree right over there. You need to have coffee trees, and you need to have espresso machines. So now you need a mining industry, and you need a smelting industry because, like, you need some metal for the espresso machine and whatnot, right? And when you start going backwards through that tree, you realize that about 1 billion people came together to give you 1 cup of coffee for $5. And none of them cared anything about you. In fact, none of them knows you or know that what they are doing is going to yield a coffee cup for you. The people that mined the metal that went into the espresso machine that Starbucks bought and put in the Starbucks office, they had no idea about you or about Starbucks or about coffee machines. Why did they do it then? Simple answer. Because they wanted money. Right? This is the neurotransmitter that runs through the system. If you start, like as I said, take the $5 and put some radioactive color on it and see how it spreads through the veins and arteries of the economy, you will see the entire structure, the entire tree of the economy in this 1 cup of coffee. Or the pencil, the parable of the pencil, for those of you who are familiar with that. Okay, so, I talk about markets, I talk about money, and I claim money is, for lack of a better word, good. And then people talk to me about capitalism and these things, and etc. And I claim that anyone that talks about late-stage capitalism just doesn't know how to read graphs. This is a graph. This is one of my favorite graphs. What does it say? World population living in extreme poverty in the world from 1820 to 2015. The red is people who live in extreme poverty. Extreme poverty in this graph is defined, I think, as $1.90 a day. Yes. So imagine your life if all you can spend is $1.90 a day at current prices. This is extreme poverty. We're talking about enough money to get enough calories to survive. Okay? This is extreme poverty. And in 1820, like 85% to 90% of the population of Earth lived in extreme poverty. And that was not just true for 1820, it was true for the entirety of the history of humanity. We were just getting by. And then, stuff started happening. And we get to 1900, and the population started exploding right around 1950. But all of these new humans that are being created, extreme poverty is still increasing, but there are a lot more people who are not in extreme poverty. And then comes this point right there. No one knows what this point there is when stuff starts going down. Guesses? Hypothesis? What happened there? This peak of the red right there. What is that?
Wall came down?
The wall came down. Which wall?
Germany.
The Berlin Wall. This is when communism fell and all of the socialist countries behind the Iron Curtain started adopting market policies. And in the last 30 years alone, we have gotten 1 billion people out of extreme poverty. I'm talking about people that couldn't have enough money to afford enough calories to live. Right? I'm not talking about fancy cars or anything. 1 billion people in the last 30 years. This is what late-stage capitalism is. And if you think that we did that by increasing income inequality, no. Income inequality on the world stage has also decreased in these 30 years. So in the last 30 years, we decreased by 1 billion. Forget about the fact that we also added another 1 billion humans, right? But just the number of people living in extreme poverty was decreased by 1 billion. And then, we have that discussion, and people are like, yeah, but what about all the billionaires? I mean, why does Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have so much money? Why does Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have so much money? Another question. Anyone has a hypothesis?
You took
Yes.
a lot of risk.
What?
You took a lot of risk.
So
Risked
that's
everything you had.
one answer. There's a better one in my view. Yeah.
Lots of services.
What?
Lots of services.
They provided a lot of services, right? Which gets very close to the answer that I like. Yeah?
They got people's productivity underneath their,
Their umbrella.
yeah.
My favorite answer to that question is because we gave it to them. Of our own free will. I definitely gave both of these gentlemen a lot of money. Okay, and I'm sure all of you gave at least one of them some money. Why? I mean, Jeff Bezos is like wealthy enough. Why are you giving him money? What's wrong with you people? Oh, he's providing the services. You like it way better than going out and shopping in a store. Who does that anymore? Yes? They created really valuable services that we other humans, not them, we value and we want. And we are willing to give them our karma points in exchange for these services. I mean, I live in the wonderful world in which there is like, anyone here knows Star Trek? They have that universal replicator. You ask the machine whatever you want and it just like creates it out of atoms. I live in a world in which there's a slightly broken universal replicator. It takes a day, but I can replicate anything. Right? I press the button, and a day later, whatever I want is right there. And that is a service that I find super valuable. And I'm willing to pay for it with my hard-earned proofs of service that I got by serving, well, you right now. So the answer that I like, again, is because we gave it to them. And we gave it to them because they created really valuable services that we want. You want to be wealthy? Sure, create service. Serve your fellow humans. This is the secret to wealth. Serve your fellow humans. Find the best way to serve your fellow humans and you will be wealthy. We solved that. Now, we talk about all of the stuff that companies produce. GDP is just the total that is produced. And GDP gets bad rep, right? It's like people think that maximizing on GDP is bad for some reason. I'm not sure why, but again, that's because they don't know how to read graphs, I guess. What we have here is GDP per capita, i.e. you take the total produced in the country and you divide it by the number of people in that country. Okay. And here we've got healthcare expenditure per capita. Or in other words, how much each person in this country is spending on healthcare per year. And we can see that the US is sort of right there at the top because it's the wealthiest. And that it's not significantly off trend. So all of these stories about the US spending so much more than other countries on healthcare, well, it's true. As you can see, it's right at the top. But is it spending more than other countries when you compare to just how wealthy we are? Well, in other countries, orderlies make $1 a day, and here they make $20 an hour. Clearly, healthcare here is going to be much more expensive. So that's not sort of a mind-blowing discovery that healthcare is more expensive. The question is whether it's on the line. Self-reported life satisfaction. Right? You just go around the world and ask people, hey, are you happy with your life? And what do you know? There is such a strong correlation with GDP per capita. Because you know why? Because people who get a shower every morning and get a coffee whenever they want at Starbucks, these are things that make humans happy, it would appear. Unsurprisingly. So GDP is easily measured, it's unambiguous, and it's correlated with all the things that we want. So yeah, there's no problem with maximizing GDP. It's good, it maximizes human happiness, which is, I think, what we all want. I hope, I don't know. That's what I want, maximize human happiness. Now the thing is that you won the birth lottery, right? Because you are in this red spot up there. Again, GDP per capita, and here there's mean daily expenditure per capita. What that means is how much money you spend per day. Okay? The majority of the world's population lives on less than $10 a day. And that is in international dollars, which is a concept I need to explain. It is as if they lived in the US and faced US prices and spent $10 a day. Because in their country, they're spending $2 a day, but the prices are so much lower, we do some eco magic and we correct for this. Okay. So most of the world lives on less than $10 a day. The median in the US is about $50 a day. And you live in that bread bowl, which brings up another question, another puzzle of humans. Why is it that you live in, as a famous politician likes to say, the wealthiest country in the history of the world? Completely agree. Because this is what it is. Historically, this is what it is. You have access to more material wealth than anyone, both alive and dead, both now and in the past. Right? You are way, like orders of magnitude wealthier than your parents. In fact, each and every one of you, I would claim, is wealthier than the King of England 300 years ago. And some of you may look at me and say, what are you talking about? I don't think as wealthy as the King of England. And I'll be like, yeah, but like, you know, you get better healthcare and better education and better food and better access to clean water and everything. Your life is just so much better. So why can't I say that you're wealthier than the King of England? I mean, the King of England will give half his kingdom for a magic wand that can summon loved ones out of thin air for like a face-to-face conversation and tell you what the weather will be tomorrow and give you access to all of the world's information. And you get that for the low price of $69.99. Right? You don't even need to give half your kingdom. That seems great. So why is it? Why is it that everything is amazing and nobody is happy? Hypothesis? Yes?
Well, because we made something a commodity that used to be like more of a relationship.
More of a relationship became a commodity. Interesting. So there is, I completely agree, a deterioration of the social fabric. And I think you get a lot more happiness from having close friends than from having ski vacations. That's my view of happiness. That's what makes me happy. And I think people suddenly got access to ski vacations and they thought that's what will make them happy and started going on ski vacations rather than, I don't know, getting their friends out or whatever. So I agree with that as minor reason. Question is what is really driving this? And I have a hypothesis myself as well. That won't surprise you. So as I told you, I think we live in the golden age of humanity. Because everything is amazing right now. I mean, if you don't believe me, try a thought experiment. I love thought experiments. Here is a time machine. It only moves backwards. Where would you prefer to live? Where would you go? I mean, you go more than, 100 years and all the women here become property, right, of their fathers and then their husbands. I mean, I've got a bit of melanin on me. So, I don't know, I go back too far and maybe my freedom is taken away, right? Or if I'm in a different region, not enough melanin. We live in the freest, safest, wealthiest, most abundant era in human history. But it doesn't feel like it. Because everyone's depressed and everyone's sad and everyone feels economic anxiety. And I'm like, what's going on? Why is it that everyone's so down? So here's what I think. We economists call that relative wealth concerns, or keeping up with the Joneses. But really, it's just like, fancy words for a really simple concept. We're all just walking through life, comparing ourselves to our peer group, and feeling envy when we find ourselves lacking in this comparison to our peer group. Now, the statement peer group here is critical. Because, 100 years ago, my peer group was my village. And if everyone were really poor, but I got a shower once a month, then I was super wealthy. Right? But now we've got social media, and we've got influencers, and we see everything everywhere all at once. And so now I'm envious of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and the influencers on Instagram. Right? They are my peer group, and they clearly live better than I do. So I feel bad. I feel like I'm not keeping up. My friend likes to say that everyone thinks that the answer is regulation, and Robert thinks that the answer is meditation. And I love this sentence. Right? Sort of all you need is to meditate on how great you have it, to just start being happy. And that seems super easy, right? Like, we all want to be happy, and if all we need to do is think about how great we have it to be happy, then that seems easy. So yeah, in my view, the problem is the problem of envy. And it used to be that envy was a deadly sin. Right? One of the 7 deadly sins was envy. And now, envy has been rebranded. Now we call envy fairness. Sometimes we call it equity. Right? And we talk about how unfair it is that other people have more than us. But I'll go back to here and remind you that you won the birth lottery. In a fair and equitable world, every dollar you spend above $10 a day would go to someone else. A poor Kenyan, a poor Bangladeshi. Yeah, the world is unfair. I know that. It's clear to me. The answer is not to try and make everyone equal, in my view.